The Night Stalker is a name that has become synonymous with fear and terror. During the summer of 1985, Richard Ramirez, a ruthless and sadistic serial killer, brought California to its knees. His reign of terror, which lasted over a year, saw him commit some of the most heinous crimes imaginable, breaking into homes, brutally assaulting victims, and leaving communities in a state of panic. But who was the man behind the monstrous crimes? How did he elude capture for so long, and what drove him to commit such unspeakable acts? In this episode, we'll explore the chilling story of the Night Stalker, from his troubled beginnings to his terrifying spree and eventual capture. This is the story of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. To understand the Night Stalker, we must first look at his origins. Ricardo Leyva Munoz Ramirez, known as Richard Ramirez, was born on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. He was the youngest of 5 children in a family struggling with poverty and dysfunction. Richard's childhood was marked by violence and trauma. His father, Julian, was an abusive disciplinarian, and his home life was turbulent. Seeking an escape, Richard spent much of his time with his older cousin, Miguel. Miguel, a Vietnam War veteran, played a pivotal and disturbing role in shaping Richard's psyche. Miguel would recount graphic and horrifying stories of his experiences in Vietnam, including acts of violence against civilians. He even showed Richard photographs of his victims. One day, Richard witnessed Miguel murder his wife during a heated argument, an event that profoundly impacted the young boy. By the time Richard was a teenager, he had developed an interest in Satanism and a fascination with violence. He began experimenting with drugs and committing petty crimes. These early signs of deviance would eventually escalate into something far more sinister. In 1984, Richard Ramirez's dark fantasies turned into a horrifying reality. His first known murder occurred in June of that year, when he brutally assaulted and killed a 79-year-old woman named Jenny Vincow in her Los Angeles apartment. Her body was discovered with multiple stab wounds, and her throat had been slashed. This crime marked the beginning of what would become a year-long spree of terror. Ramirez developed a pattern. He would break into homes late at night, often through unlocked windows or doors, and attack the unsuspecting residents inside. His methods were brutal and varied: shooting, stabbing, strangulation, and his victims ranged widely in age, from children to the elderly. What made Ramirez particularly terrifying was his unpredictability. Unlike many serial killers, he did not have a consistent victim profile. His choice of victims seemed random, making it nearly impossible for authorities to predict his next move. Adding to the horror, Ramirez often left satanic symbols at the crime scenes, such as pentagrams drawn in blood. These acts fueled a media frenzy, with reporters dubbing him the Night Stalker. The nickname captured the essence of his reign of terror. A predator lurking in the shadows, striking when his victims were most vulnerable. By the summer of 1985, Ramirez had become the most wanted man in California. His attacks were growing more frequent and more brutal. Residents of Los Angeles and surrounding areas were gripped by fear, taking extra precautions to secure their homes. Gun sales skyrocketed, and many people refused to sleep at night, afraid they might become his next target. The police, under immense pressure, formed a task force dedicated to capturing the Night Stalker. Despite the rising panic, Ramirez showed no signs of slowing down. In May 1985, he attacked 2 sisters, Lillian and Mabel, in their home, leaving them severely injured but alive. Weeks later, he brutally murdered another couple, killing the husband and sexually assaulting the wife before fleeing the scene. His spree wasn't limited to Los Angeles. Ramirez expanded his attacks to the San Francisco Bay Area, further complicating the investigation. At one crime scene, he left behind a shoe print, a rare Avia sneaker, which would later become a crucial piece of evidence. With each crime, Ramirez's confidence grew. He seemed to enjoy the fear he was instilling, often taunting his victims or leaving behind satanic messages. The Night Stalker wasn't just a killer. He was a self-proclaimed servant of evil, reveling in his notoriety. Despite the chaos, investigators were slowly closing in on Ramirez. The Avia shoe print became a key lead, as it was a rare model sold in limited quantities. Detectives worked tirelessly, tracing the shoe's distribution and narrowing down potential suspects. In one crucial break, a survivor provided a detailed description of Ramirez. Police were able to create a composite sketch, which they distributed to the public. As the media intensified its coverage, pressure mounted on Ramirez to stay one step ahead. The breakthrough came in August 1985, when Ramirez made a critical mistake. After murdering a couple in Los Angeles, he fled the scene in their stolen car. The vehicle was later found abandoned, and police were able to lift a fingerprint from inside. Using the fingerprint, authorities identified Richard Ramirez as the Night Stalker. His mugshot was released to the public, and a massive manhunt began. For the first time, the people of California knew the face of their tormentor. On August 31st, 1985, Ramirez's reign of terror came to an end in a dramatic fashion. While attempting to steal a car in East Los Angeles, he was recognized by locals who had seen his face on the news. A crowd quickly formed, chasing him down and detaining him until police arrived. Ramirez's capture marked the beginning of a long and complex legal battle. His trial became a media spectacle, with his unsettling behavior and chilling demeanor on full display. Ramirez showed no remorse, often flashing satanic symbols and proclaiming his allegiance to evil. In 1989, after one of the longest and most expensive trials in California history, Ramirez was convicted of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. He was sentenced to death, but he remained unapologetic, famously saying, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory." Richard Ramirez would spend over 2 decades on death row, where he continued to draw attention, receiving letters from admirers and maintaining his sinister persona. He died of natural causes in 2013, but the shadow of his crimes still lingers. The story of the Night Stalker is one of horror, fear, and ultimately, justice. Richard Ramirez's crimes left an indelible mark on California, exposing vulnerabilities and forcing communities to rethink their sense of safety. While Ramirez is gone, his legacy as one of America's most notorious serial killers remains. His case serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind a seemingly ordinary face. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of one of history's most terrifying criminal cases. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime deep dives. Together, we can keep the memory of these cases alive, ensuring that justice and awareness prevail.